Hello. What a treat to be back for another webinar. Spoken language has changed. Yeah, you want to change I will be speaking English on this webinar just for the avoidance of doubt, guys. Well, one of my greatest ideas, this, I think. Why didn't I think of it sooner? We are going to be talking about reporting in Street Manager today. I'm going to learn a lot because I'm no expert on this for sure. But we have the top 3 experts in England on this subject on this call today. Great to be joined by them. Now, feel free to get your questions into the Q&A section. I think we had some issues on the last webinar where a couple of people couldn't see that, or you can use the chat if you've got access to that, but you should be able to see the Q&A. No guarantee. Becky can't hear anything. Okay, hopefully other people can hear things. Becky, you might need to exit and come back in. Can people give me a sign that they can hear? Do you have access to the emojis, guys? Oh, thank you, Ricky, for 1. Okay. Becky, have no fear. This will end up on, put your hands down. Becky, this will end up on the YouTube's channel. Right. Without further ado, where was I before I got distracted by that whole... Oh, yeah, put your questions into the chat, but we're going to sort of focus on the prepared material from the guys, and then I'll see if I can ask some questions. We'll have to see how the time goes. We can always do this again if we want to, guys, in a few weeks, and like get into some stuff that we missed or whatever. But without further ado, let's hear from one of those leading English experts on this matter. It's the man himself. It's Kevin Ferguson from Durham, guys. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on this webinar.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Paul. Yeah, not a problem. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to go through some Excel stuff. I mean, you could use other programs as well, but I'm kind of doing more specifically Excel here. So I will just share my screen and I will go you through. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Great. So yeah, so as I say, this is kind of more of a focus on Excel. There's similar Excel spreadsheet programs that will work in a similar way. So if you're using different ones, that's fine. It just maybe the process is slightly different. So what we're going to kind of cover in this bit of the presentation is on the following slide. So the intended outcomes, so setting the scenes, getting your source data, the export placement of the source data, 2 methods in Excel, pivot tables and formulas, which is best, and highlighting cell rules. Following this, it will then go on to Power BI with Jonathan. So outcome of this bit is what we're going to do is we're going to essentially create a table. So look at 2 methods for similar outcomes to create the same table or very similar tables. And we're going to have the rows of the table being the promoter. The columns will be the month and the cell data will be the number of instances that promoter had work start within that month. You could change that from promoter to your highway authority, whatever you want it to be, but this is just the example that I'm using. So to start with, got to get the source data, and there's 2 main methods, which is your API and your Street Manager manual exports. So for works, FBNs, inspections, reinstatements, kind of the main screens you'll see on Street Manager, the data is pretty much the same for the API or the export. So it doesn't really matter which one you start in. You can always start in an export and then switch over to an API later. But if you download all my data, that data is slightly different. So just an overview for the API. You only need to set it up once. It is a slightly longer setup, but there's minimal manual intervention after that once your setup's complete. So there's no sort of export every day, that kind of thing, which is positive. It's always up to date depending on your setup, but loading the data into Excel can be slow, which can be a problem dependent on the users. So for the manual export, which is going into one of your works and then go and export at the bottom. There's no pre-setup, so you don't need to set up the API. If you've got Street Manager access, you've got access to the manual export. It's faster to load generally in Excel, depending on how many formula you've got. You've got a little bit more control over the data exports as well, because you can apply filters. So it can make the data export a little bit smaller, which means your file size is smaller. So getting the source data, so the API, essentially you'll need to set it up from this website. This gives you everything you'll need to know, which is just the DFTs, find and use roadworks data website, and create an account. I would say, if you're going to go this route, to ask for at least your IT team's involvement. There is possible security issues with this, especially if you go into the route of the API that's not open data, because you've got data in there that's protected. So rather than avoid the GDPR things, it might be worth getting them involved. So that's kind of the process I've done. I've got the data loaded into a SharePoint folder. Your IT team might suggest a different route, but it doesn't matter. It kind of comes in the same way. So you get it in Excel by going to get data from file, and then in this instance, SharePoint folder. But as you can see, Excel's got a lot of options for getting data from external sources. So that's not the only option that you've got. So the manual export, much easier, and probably many of you have used it before. You go into applications and works, for example, filter it down. I'll generally say use a year of data, because otherwise the export's just going to take longer, your file's going to be bigger. Apply your filters and then export, and that'll take you to the export page, and you just download it. Either way, that data is probably going to look pretty much the same. But then when you're loading it into Excel, I would say try and keep the page it's loaded onto separate from anything else that you're doing. And you'll see why later. It will make more sense later on. Rather than applying filters or anything to that specific page. If you're using pivot tables, for example, use a new sheet rather than the same one. If you're using formulas, try and do them off the sheet you just pasted the data into, doing a second sheet. Again, you'll see why later. So we'll start on some of the formulas for the use of that data. So try and there's a lot of formulas and functions in Excel and other spreadsheet programs. So I can't cover them all, but I'll try and cover some that are useful or are found useful for kind of summarizing data and doing what the example we're doing today. So one of the main ones probably is COUNTIF or COUNTIFs, which is similar statements. They kind of do the same thing. So COUNTIF is based off one range and one criteria. COUNTIFs is based on multiple ranges and multiple criteria. Don't worry, there will be videos sort of explaining this. So we'll be creating the table, as I said, with the promoter and the month. This is just some data that I've played with and kind of messed up the names. So it's not real data. So for the formula, we're going to use the promoter name. We have to match the promoter name exactly as it is in Street Manager. So exactly as it exports. Some of them don't export as you'd expect. So if you look in your data, and the promoter column generally is column K, unless that moves later on. I've forgotten which one the Highway Authority column is. I think that's an earlier column. And you take the name from there. There is another way to do that, but again, it's kind of adding more complexity there. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. So there's a short video after this one. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. So what we're going to do is copy and paste the promoter name into a new sheet. I'm going to select the neighboring column and start entering a formula by pressing equals and then COUNTIF, open brackets, and then without pressing enter or return, we're going to go into the export sheet, select the column for the promoter name, so the entire column, so the K at the top. Then we'll press comma, and then we'll navigate back to our other sheet and copy the promoter name, and then close the formula with close brackets at the end. So there's going to be video playing in this next slide, which hopefully, can you see that video?
Yes.
Yeah, that should be playing now. So this is kind of the process that we've just done there. So I've copied the name, paste it into a cell. You can resize the cell if you want. And we're starting the formula there. So we use COUNTIF function, open brackets. We'll go into this one, column K for the promoter, because that's all the promoter names. Back into sheet 1. Select there we are, and that's counted them all. So that is every instance of this company name within that sheet at the moment. So bear with me. So just try and move on. So yeah, COUNTIF is a similar version of COUNTIFs, which I mentioned earlier. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch COUNTIF to COUNTIFs. So just add the S at the end. And this one allows us to add more ranges and criteria to the results of the sum of figures there. So this is another video. Hopefully should play it. No, it didn't. So bear with me. I shall play this one for you. Yeah, add the column number, their name. We'll change it to COUNTIFs. We'll add a second range, which is our actual start, and a comma, and then we're going to use a new feature here, which is greater than or equal to, and then a date. There is a way to put that date in separately from somewhere else and sort of automate it, but again, don't want to go too complex. We're adding another range, and then we're adding actual start again, and we're using less than the first or the second. So that's everything within January. So everything for that company name within January. So what we did there was essentially this. It looks really complex when you're looking at it, but once you've done it a few times, it's not too bad. So essentially what we said in English is for each row, if the promoter name in cell B3, which is where we copied it to, is in column K, which is our promoters column of the source data, and the actual start date is later than or the same as the 1st of the 1st 2024, and the actual start date column again is before the 1st of the 2nd 2024, then add 1 to the count, and it'll do that for each row. So you can use the operators you used there, which is greater than, less than, and equal to. And you can see those are in speech marks as well. Yep. So we're skipping to the next video. Don't know why they're starting early. But yeah, so what we're doing now is we're going to copy formulas across. So it's all very well writing one formula, but you don't want to have to do that for every single month and every single company. The problem with copying formulas across is in Excel, you'll notice that it will try and predict what you want next. So it will change the column of the source, it will change the row. So we want to be able to lock rows or columns to copy formula across without it changing. So we always want it to be column B for the company name in our sheet 1. And we always want it to be column K for the company name in the permit export. So we want to lock those columns. So I'll just play that for this video and kind of go through that process. So you can see there, Excel assumed we went from January to February when I copied that across. So when we've copied that across, you can see it's gone from permit export K, it's moved it on to permit export L. And we don't want that column to change, we want that to stay the same. So what we have to do is absolute cell referencing. So to do that, we put a $sign before each instance we want a lock. So we don't want it ever to change from column K, we want it to stay as column B. We want it to stay as column BI. And again, same on that one. You'll notice we didn't put one before the 4 in the column in cell B3. Sorry, the 3. And you'll see why later. So when we copy that across, you notice that it kept everything we needed apart from the dates, which we can quickly change. Again, there's a different way to do that. And then that's our change formula. So it's a much quicker way to do it. So with absolute cell referencing, as I said, it locks the column or the row depending on where you've put the $sign. As you notice, we didn't put it before the 3 in the cell reference B3. That's because we want to be able to copy that down when we add more promoters. So have a look at the next promoter and we'll copy. Again, there is another quick way to do this, but I don't want to overload you with things. So when we've copied that down, you can see it changed B3 to B4, which is what we wanted it to do. Again, you can do that from the top. So once you've done the top row, essentially you could just copy it down for every promoter that you wanted to do it on. So what you can do is in Excel is kind of reuse the formulas. So once you've saved your spreadsheet, you can amend the source data by deleting it entirely or pasting fresh data at the end of it. So that's your permit export in this example. And that will just reuse the same formulas. And that's why I've said try and keep the first sheet unedited, which is just your source data. That way, say if you've got 1 year's worth of data in there and you wanted another year's in, you can paste that at the end or delete it entirely and paste the new set of data in there. And that will just update the formulas, and any graphs that are coming off those formulas automatically based on the source data just being pasted in. So I'll show a short example here where I edited the source data. So I've selected that, deleted it, I'll paste some new source data in. And you can see the results have changed. So when we go on to pivot tables, so I would say pivot tables are a really quick way to display a kind of similar thing, a similar table. Perhaps a little bit more fiddly to get more powerful results out of, and you don't have some of the controls that you can have later on in more complex formulas. But that said, for simple data, they can be really useful. So to set up a simple pivot table in Excel, it's insert table, insert, and then pivot table onto your sheet, and then you're selecting your source data. Again, go through the video and you can see that. So we select all of the source data, which is what that little arrow on the corner does. We'll insert tables. Yours might just say pivot table instead of tables, depending on your version of Excel. I've selected new sheet there, which you didn't see. And then we're going to try and set it up the same. So our rows will be the work promoter, columns will be the month, and the data will be the number of times that work promoter features within that month. So there's our promoter on the rows, doing the count of promoters in values, and it's a little way down, the actual start date in the columns. There we go. And you can expand those. And the really nice thing about Excel pivot tables is you've got all of your data really quickly. And there is another nice feature, which should be on this slide. Perhaps not, that's the same one. Which is when you double click into a cell on a pivot table, probably similar to something that you're going to see in Power BI later, is you can see the 350 results say in this cell. So it will show you individually all of those records that make up that count. So if you double click on it, there's all those individual records. Leave this slide. So yeah, so there's two different methods there, the pivot tables versus the formulas. So whilst quick to set up, the pivot tables are difficult to add complexity to. You can add more complexity than I've shown there, but it does get a little bit more difficult. And you don't have the granular control that you do with formulas, especially when you're using if statements and things like that within a formula. ultimately, it would kind of be dependent on the data that you want to show and the complexity of the results that you need based on what you probably would use. So as you can see here, this is an example of where I've used XLOOKUP in formulas, where it's pulled data from more than one sheet, and we've got the results. So this is from Download All My Data, so you can see by person the type of works that are undertaken throughout that month. So once you've got that data, it can be difficult to just look at a big table of data. So a quick way to look at it is by highlighting the cells in highlight cell rules. So this works on both methods, pivot tables and formulas. So just essentially you're selecting the data that you want to see quickly. So most of those under conditional formatting in Excel, which is just that menu there. So you can condition formatting, and this one is data bars, which are really nice sort of line graphs, well, bars based on your data. So you can see there that the higher the data is, the bigger the bar is, which is a nice quick way to look at some data depending on what it is. So that's just conditional format and data bars, and then you can select your fill, color, or and gradient, as long as you've selected the data range that you want. Next one is color scales, which is quite nice for as sort of a red, amber, green type thing. You can see it does get more granular than that when you've got more data, but you can see there the top ones are in red, middle ones amber, and then the green at the bottom. Again, when you've got a lot of data, that can make anomaly jump out really well. Another useful one, which you might use for when there's a condition in the data. So if it's gone over 10, for example, you might want to highlight a certain color. Is highlight cell rules in greater than, less than, between, or equal to. Again, you select your data, apply conditional format, and then you can type it in. You can type in a percentage or a number, and then what you want to highlight those cells as. And that kind of is my whistle-stop tour of using spreadsheets. Again, which method you use, if you chose to use spreadsheets, will be entirely based on your data and your personal preferences. It's good to reuse the data, reuse the same formula if you can, so keep that sheet separate, and it'll save you a lot of time in recreating formula or pivot tables over and over if you're doing the same ones. And there is an enormous amount of data in the Street Manager exports, which will probably be enough for what you need in most instances. And that kind of covers what I've got to say. I don't know if Aaron, if you want to take over the slideshare.
Thank you, Kevin. What a treat. Aaron said I was never going to get over 150 people on a webinar just talking about pivot tables and spreadsheet formulas. And I said, Aaron, you ain't seen nothing yet. Also, 6 people have left during that, and I know who you are. So, I'll be getting on to you. Kevin, can we just cover Wayne's point, which is the getting the data bit? So can you go back? Don't take over the share, Aaron. Can you go back to that first slide you had? I think it was near enough, where it said there was you were talking about getting an account, and there was an address people needed to go onto. So how does that bit work? Yeah,
this bit. So this is if you just do a search in Google just for Roadwork Service API, this will be the first result you get. Essentially, you need to sign up with for an API account with those details there. That might take a little while.
What's this endpoint stuff? I don't have an endpoint, Kevin.
So the endpoint is essentially is a bit like it's a set of like a security measure essentially. So when the data is being sent out from Street Manager, it knows that it's going to the correct place.
Okay.
So it could be like a server or something like that. It's normally a server. So generally, I would recommend to get your IT to set that up
Right.
in the individual companies because of the security risks associated with it. Because if somebody else has access to that server, then you've got potential GDPR issues, which it's best off letting IT departments deal with that element of it because they'll have certain processes and security. and then just let them feed the data to you through something like the methods that I've used, SharePoint, something like that. You could go, open data maybe, and if you have your own endpoint. But again, if you're using the data for work, it's probably best to have, your own IT team deal with that element of it.
So, I mean, this kind of, I didn't really understand this. Like, you're using Excel here to basically, I thought you needed Power BI to do this. So, that was kind of a blocker for people, I thought. So you're in the
Yeah.
kind of the back end here of the information, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that was me. That was one of the slides. So it's pretty easy to get that once that's set up. If you've got a SharePoint, for example, it's pretty easy to get it. Excel's got a huge range of sort of source data there, so you can even get it from Azure platforms. You can see from that picture, huge range of choices for. So it's kind of not limited to just SharePoint. There is other potentials you could use.
Wow. I mean, yeah, like I say, I've learned stuff there for sure. Um, let's Ed, if you want to pop any comments in the chat. Um, Shirley says, if I'm already working through an API, do I still need to do this? Well, I mean, if you're happy with your reporting, Shirley, no. Like,
Hmm.
this is for people that want to get more stuff direct from Street Manager. So I can't answer that question for you. Like, if you're like, oh, this is how we report and we're happy with our setup, fine. But if you want to go into the back end of Street Manager and pull stuff out, then yeah, you'll need to look into this. But no one's making you do anything. Right, it's nearly half past. So, oh, there's a question from Ed. Thank you, Ed. If we had more time and I knew what I was doing, I'd bring you into the meeting to ask you a question. But is that API data link automated, and how does it then look in Excel? I don't even understand that question, Kevin, so I hope you do.
Yeah, so that's dealt with essentially by our IT team. So yes, it is automated. I think ours is set to update sort of fairly frequently for our API, and that's just feeding that into, as I say, a SharePoint folder, and I'm just pulling the data from that. Those settings would be something you would have to discuss with your IT team. I know ours were kind of reluctant to have the update too often, because they didn't want to use too many resources on it. But again, that's something you probably need to discuss. You could have it updated kind of as often as you need.
Yeah, for a lot of stuff, overnight updates works, but
Yeah.
obviously it depends exactly what you're doing. Kevin, last question, near enough. Are you happy to make these slides available to the gang?
Yes. Yes. No problem.
Do the reports Oh, I see. That's more of a statement. Do the reports and compare with the API report to be sure you get what you want. Good advice, Nicola.
Yeah.
Um, do you do you copy and paste it out of your SharePoint folder then, Kevin?
No, essentially it'll load into its own page. You can then give it a page. You can decide the page name. It's essentially the same way as if you copied and pasted, but it'll go automatically into its own sheet. Um, which is a good way as well. Is if you wanted to go from the sort of exports first and then move to an API based, you could do that because the data is pretty much the same for the most part. So you could set it up with the exports and then switch to get your data from an API. So you're using the same formulas. You don't need to set those up again. You're just switching your data source essentially.
Thank you, Kevin. Question for me: how do you know all this stuff? No, let's save that for another time.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to hear now. We're going from Durham all the way down to Somerset, and we're going to hear from the man, the legend. It's Jonathan Weeks, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, Paul. Hi, all. Thank you for inviting me onto this reporting webinar. Paul's kind of set high expectations. I wouldn't call myself a user, an expert. I just call myself a user that's kind of explored a way to show Street Manager data in a visual visual form. So, and what, can you see my screen first of all? Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do a live demo of how quickly it is to take some street manager data and quickly turn it into like a sort of a visual. And it's something that we use when we talk through performance within the team and we talk through performance with work promoters. So I mean to get the data into Power BI, I mean it's something that we're all very familiar with. Is that I just export the data from from applications or works, and I use the export. So for instance, if I want to look at a quarter, then what I might do is I might go to the filter options, put in the dates there, click the export button, and then I quickly have a list of readily available Excel files. Now, I try to avoid using our IT team to get the data into Power BI. So I kind of use a manual method, and it's actually quite easy. So all you do is you click on Get Data, and then you choose the Excel format, and you can kind of see that I've got some reports there already preloaded, and I literally click on an export file there. So this is the section 81 defective apparatus data, and then it should, there we go. So quickly load that in, and there we go. So that's downloaded in some data already, and then what you end up with is a list of imported Excel files there. So I've kind of preloaded in some data already, sort of all export files that you're kind of all familiar with there. And I'm just going to start with a blank page and just see what sort of visual I can sort of build ever so quickly. So I'm interested in how many works I've had from promoters recently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly create a donut there, and I've gone into my PA export file. So let's find my promoters, drop my promoters into there to make that a bit bigger. And I need something to count. So I'm going to count permit reference numbers. So where's the permit reference number? And I quickly drop that into that, put it there, and I do a count. So straight away, I've for that quarter, I've kind of got some promoter data in there. Now, let's make it a bit more useful. So let's see. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. That's always the risk with live things. Let's create another one there. So let's see how many sort of different permit assessment types we've had. So let's find the status, assessment status, granted permit, granted. Let's find permit reference in there again, and let's do a count of permit reference. So straight away, I'm kind of already very quickly building the visual, and I can look at promoter A, and I can kind of see that I've got 878 permits granted. I've got 30 PMR sitting there, but let's kind of make that even more useful, because let's see if we can sort of see put in a traffic let's put in a box to show the types of traffic management being used. So let's put traffic management type in there. Let's count permit reference number again. Let's kind of, and let's make that let's make it a bit tidier in a minute as well. So let's move that across there like that. Actually, in fact, let's change that to promoter. So let's put promoter in there. Let's do account there, and let's change that to a donut. Let's make that a bit smaller. Make that a bit larger. And so let's look at promoter A. So oh, let's got that the wrong way around now, haven't I? Let's change that round. Right. Awesome. Change. This is one of those live instances where I try to show you how to do it sort of quite sort of live, and it's obviously not working as it should, but let's just click undo and get back to where I was. So right. So let's put traffic management back in there, and let's get promoter in there, and let's see how that changes things round. Right. I'm having fun and games here, but what I'm trying to show is that it is very quite easy to start getting data in there and sort of building up a visual picture. And what happens is that where I was trying to get to was this point here, where we can very quickly sort of click on a promoter. And straight away, you can kind of see, again, sort of where your granted permits are. We can kind of see the forms of traffic management being used, sort of the works category. And for instance, I could kind of click on, well, which promoters having the most road closures. I can quickly click on this, and I can kind of see, well, there's an even balance. Promoter sort of A, D, and C that they have quite a lot of road closures. We can kind of see promoter B doesn't have very many road closures. Let's see, and if I can things like I can click on works cancelled. So who has the greatest percentage of cancelled works? I can see that there's kind of a sort of even spread there. Importantly is that I think this is always a good topic of conversation, is when you get those granted permits and those works have cancelled. I mean, I think that's sort of both used to a HA and a promoter, because it creates a point for discussion. And then what you can also do is that you can sort of look at your inspection data as well. And what I have here, I have my promoters, and I can click on promoter A, and I can straight away see where non-compliances are. I can see where the inspections categories are, and all this is working off just those Excel data, sort of data tables sat in the background, and it's kind of very, very interactive, where you can kind of click on promoters. You can kind of start to see sort of some kind of useful figures as well. You can kind of look at your inspection outcomes. I can kind of sort of look at failed hires, and then I can kind of see you got so when you in a meeting with a promoter, you can kind of sort of look at the failings, and you can kind of talk through the inspection notes, and so I think it's about creating sort of conversation. And something else I find sort of very useful is that you can use your response codes, and what I can do is I can sort of click on, I can kind of see that the greatest number of refusals is around RC31s, followed by RC41s, and I can kind of see, well, sort of which promoter is perhaps having the greatest RC41 refusals, and I can kind of see straight away it's kind of like promoter A, and I can kind of see, oh, so a lot of those are based around SCIs. And if I look at clashes of work. So I can kind of see that it's telling me that most clashes seem to be happening around road closures, and then we kind of have the assessment comments. So you can kind of talk through those as well. So I mean, you can also look at sort of things like sort of defective apparatus as well. So again, you can kind of see which promoter is having the greatest number of Section 81s, and you can kind of see whether they're accepted, rejected, acknowledged. And I think the good thing about this is that at any time I want to load new data in, I can just go to Street Manager and I can just create a new Excel file to be exported, and I literally go in and I kind of literally just click on Excel format, go to that save point and export it in. And you find that once that data is sat there, if you save it to the same location, a lot of the time all you then have to do is literally go on, refresh data, and then straight away that just imports that new data into Power BI, and then you kind of got your latest sort of set of data in there. So yeah, so this is just a very sort of quick sort of demo to kind of show sort of what you can do with Power BI, and obviously collapsed under the pressure of doing a live demo there. But it's one of those things where if once you've got a blank screen, it is literally a case of just going in there and then just playing with it sometimes. And I mean, so let's have another go. So for instance, I mean, let's look at let's do another donut, and let's put in the inspection categories. Let's put in the let's find the inspection reference number. And so let's quickly do inspection reference, go in there, inspection reference number in there, and let's quickly do a count. And then so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly put in a date slider, and so I'm going to go off the inspection date. So straight away I can then kind of just sort of slide and see how that changes. And let's put in the promoter again, and let's put in the inspection reference number, do a count, and so straight away I can sort of click on promoter A, and I can kind of see how that's changing. And let's just quickly change those into numbers. So straight away now I can click on promoter D, and you can kind of see how the data is changing. And you can also start to then make it a bit more pretty, a bit more presentable. You can suddenly sort of do things like, well, let's make it stand out a bit more. Let's give it a title. And let's just add a bit of color to it as well. And so straight away you know, so hope that's a better demonstration of sort of how you can very quickly get data in there, and then you know, start doing you know, sort of just getting quick visual wins, as I call them. You can kind of see that, you know, so how quickly I'm just kind of going in there and just making it look a bit more presentable. Right. Well, hopefully that was a very sort of quick whistle stop tour, and hopefully, forgive the little mishap at the beginning, but hopefully you find that kind of useful, as you know, because I'm kind of relative novice to this, and I've kind of just taught myself how to use Power BI literally by doing what I was doing there, just clicking through and experimenting. But if you've got access to it, I think it is a really good sort of visual tool. And I expect some of you might be thinking, well, if I'm having a coordination meeting, I don't really want to be sharing data with all promoters. So what I can do is I can literally go in there, and I'm just going to do that, and straight away it takes it down to promoter A data, or promoter B, or C, or D. So there's lots of different ways that you can also control your data to make sure that, if you've got your data in there, you're not sharing data, from promoter A with promoter B, for instance. Right, brilliant.
Jonathan, the FPN tab, is that also masked data, or does that have real promoters in it?
That is mass data. So
Can we have a look at that tab just quickly?
yeah, of course. So what I've done is, again, that's mass data, and you can kind of see, I can click promoter B, and I can kind of see where the offences are happening, and you've got regulation there. You've got the regulation 20 there, and the offence details. So yeah, so I think that data is about 90% masked there, but So again, there is a way you can look at your FPN data as well, and you also look at your overviews as well. I got a very quick tab there. I can see what works I've got planned and in progress. I can see what works I've got cancelled, and I can see what works have been completed.
Nice. I think, Jonathan, we may need to do like someone was asking for an idiot's guide to Power BI. And maybe we need a bit of a whole story video on that or something, and you could guest star on that. I mean, this has been wild to see these queries being built up like in front of our eyes. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Which report do you run out of Street Manager to achieve the data, and what frequency to keep it accurate? Do you have to play with the generated data to get it to be like usable?
So I tend to do it sort of weekly or quarterly. I mean, it depends really. If I got a quarterly coordination meeting coming up, I download the data, I'll have a quick look at it, identify where the issues are, or there's a particular issue with a promoter, we need to have a few discussions about things. Then I might just do it sort of there and then for a meeting. But I think it's important to add is that all promoters that have seen this data, that they think it's very good, it's useful, it's visual, and like I said, the key thing is it promotes conversation, allows us to work with promoter and the promoter with us to identify where issues are. Now, I think to download it, all we literally do is I just go to, say for instance, inspections. I just go to inspections. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. Let's share. Yeah. So, for instance, if I wanted to download inspection data, to get a new raft of data in there, I just literally click on inspections. I go to filters. I want to know what's happened in the last month, and then I literally click do this, apply filters, because I want all that data, and then literally do export. And you can kind of see that's in the queue now. And then once you have it, you just literally download it, like you sort of download it, and be careful not to open that one. And then what I do is, let me share another screen.
So you're just getting bog standard exports like anyone could.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just bog standard Excel data from it's the exported data from Street Manager, and all I'm doing is I'm loading it into Power BI. I'm using the Power BI tools to then display those fields in a visual way. That's all I'm doing. You can't hurt the data by playing with it in Power BI. You're not going to change the data. You just make a mistake like I did, where perhaps it won't display correctly, but then you can see that, and then you just go back and you delete the visual and just change it.
Wow. I want to move on now because we're running out of time and we might run over because I think it's important to cover. So just to be clear, and maybe you can answer this, Jay Weeks, finally, we could have set this up so you were doing the same thing as Kevin and getting that API stuff into Power BI, and Kevin could have taken your stuff and put it into Excel. Like you could do it either way.
Yeah, yes, you can. Yeah, I'm aware that there are HAs out there that do use Power BI and they do use the API feature. And yeah, so
Right.
yeah, so you can do it either way. I just do it this way because I find it easier for myself, and I need to involve our IT team.
Yeah, great mix from you two there. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Jonathan Weeks. We're going to move on now, a little way out west, and hear from the lady herself, the legend of Streetworks, that is Jan Chapman.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to try and not speak a lot. I'm certainly not the expert either. I'm just a delver of data. A bit like what Jonathan, listening to the last two, I've certainly learnt a lot already. So what I'm going to talk about today is just going to be the quarterly reporting that I do, because I like data. So I'm just going to talk about the street water quarterly data that you get. And a lot of the measures that Jonathan mentioned actually are on this quarterly data that we get from the DFT. So we get a lump of data, very technical term, I know, that's released at the end of every quarter, and we get lots of measures like the counts of cancellations, counts of refusals, counts of permits issued, etc., etc. The DFT produce a report that covers the whole of England, that breaks it into sectors. So it's just to give you an overview. I then use that to develop the regional reports for the Hawke regions, and the data itself is also, you've got the potentially to be able to benchmark, which is what we tend to do already, or I tend to do when I've wrote some instructions. So I've got a few screenshots. So the data itself is pivots. So like Kevin showed earlier, the top left is one of the measures that we've got from the DFT database, and that's 3 months worth of data, and this is permits by work type. So it's virtually immediates, majors, minors, etc., by promoter, by region, and it's a count. So it breaks it all down. And we pull out the data and stick it into a different pivot. So if you click on, well, you can see my cursor's already on 734206. If I double click on that, it will open a brand new spreadsheet with every single record that is there. So we'll be able to do a lot of other stuff. So this is the DFT data report. This is the reports that are available that you can just click on each one. It'll take you to a new tab. You'll get a different pivot table that you can go and retrieve the data that you want to take out of it. And this is the other two screenshots are just what the data report looks like that the DFT release every quarter, which is based on the data that's in these tables. Then I do the regional report. So this is real data, by the way, but there's no names on it apart from this is the Southwest, Jonathan. It doesn't say Somerset and Thames Water on it, but this is, I just wanted to show what it looks like. So this is one of the ones that they're part of the report that's sent, which is in the Southwest, what was the pass rate of Cat A inspections per sector? What was the volume of planned works per sector? You can narrow it down if you're playing with the data like Jan tends to do, but we can see that in a little bit next. So this is, I've decided to just show you what I did to develop the report. I pulled out all of the water industry. So rather than clicking on London or Southwest or Northwest, I clicked on water, and then I filtered it just purely by Thames Water, which is where I work for, just so I could get some data. And then I did a quick pivot like Kevin showed you, and I got for each region how many immediates or planned did I send in that particular region, which again, if I double click on 7504, say in London for the immediates, that would take me to every entry that was there. And for me to work out the calculations, this is what I did. A pivot table, so by sector, immediate, planned, and the total. Again, this is the Southwest. and then worked out, did my own calculations just so I could get the percentages and the graphs that go on, which is it was quite labour intensive, because I am not the expert by any means or means. I just love data. So now we've got it partly automated. So I've got a lady who it took a while to build, where I can go in, I have to pull out every region's data and put it into its own spreadsheet or workbook, send them over to the lady, and she does some weird and wonderful wacky stuff. So I send her the regional data for each region. She sets up a Power Query, which is another function within Excel, not quite Power BI, but it's similar. It pulls data directly from the folders and then organizes and cleans it up. And then I wrote down exactly what she said, because I didn't quite understand what she meant, but dynamic summarization spelt in Americanism, so I apologize for that. But I get all the graphs are already done, I get all the data already done, and I also get year to date, so I can actually I can give everybody in the region what it looks like today, rather than just today's the last quarter. So I play on, so I'm glad that comes up. It only takes me a couple of days now to do that work, rather than a week. And the benchmarking is, you can pull out your own data from the quarterly data report, and I've wrote a set of instructions in an idiot, I wouldn't say it's an idiot's guide to Excel, but it's in my version of Excel, as in how I used it to try and take it back to the basics, which is using formulas, which is using calculations fields. It's just how, so you can actually put your data, just Thames Waters or just Somerset Councils, into your Power BI or into, and work out exactly what your measurement is based on the measures that are done by the DFT. So I've just got to remember that it's only for internal use and it shouldn't be shared outside of the Hawke community. So that region is there. The next thing I'm going to mention, because Kevin sort of mentioned it but didn't, is download all my data. This is one, I won't say it's one of my favourite ones, but I have got a favourite table in the download all my data. So you can download it from Street Manager. You get a month at a time. You get about, or you get over 100 individual tables. You can make into your own relationship database if you like. I tend to use my favorite table, which is the audit table, and that tells me in that month exactly what was done. So you've had a submission of a permit, you've had a cancellation, you've had a refusal, you've had a Cat A inspection, you've had anything you have, and you can do exactly the same as what Kevin was showing you with your Excel. Stick it into a pivot so you can break it down. You can break it down by user, or if you work in the same way that we do in Thames, you break it down by work stream. So one of the ones I do using download all my data is cancellations. So what I do is I pull out every cancellation that was issued in the last month. I then do a bit of jiggery-pokery, adding extra columns just so I could actually analyse it a bit better. So I use mainly the left and the right functionality, functions that that Excel have got, just so I can just say, right, just tell me what the work stream is. Because when I've done my analysis when I've gone through each one, which is what I tend to do, I must be mad, I definitely need a straitjacket. I then do the pivots just to say, right, which is the promoter that's causing the issue, doing too many, not putting reasons in, not doing things that we expect as Thames. So I get the work stream. The reason is taken because the details that comes on the audit table is got it's got words that come at the beginning that I don't want to have, so I just want to show me the ones that are in between the speech marks, and then I want to get rid of the MU, so the 2-digit, just so I can actually compare the original works reference with the object reference. So there's lots of bits and bobs that I do with that, and then I'd stick it into a spreadsheet, and that's me done actually. So so that's as far as I got. And I'm going to have to try and come back to where I was. So how do I stop sharing, anyone? Or have I stopped sharing?
You
think
stopped
so.
sharing. Sorry,
Right,
I was
thank
away for a
you.
second because I was trying to answer a question. Alexandra, I have posted the link to the Download All My Data YouTube's video.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Guys, we've run over our time. Let's just tie up a couple of loose ends. Steve Churchill, I don't think we can give the data files away because that would let you, Jan, I presume, sort of go into the organization specific detail, and we
Yes.
very deliberately do it at the industry level. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but we can pull out. I can pull out Thames Water data from there, but I would only be pulling out Thames Waters. So if you're Bracknell Forest, for instance, and Wayne wants to go and get his own, he can just go and pull out with Bracknell. So you
Yeah.
can. That's why you can benchmark, and that's what we tend to do. But I'm certainly not going to be sharing the files because that's just Thames Water data as well.
Yeah, also a valuable point that you need to be an admin to get into Download All My Data.
Yes.
What else did we have? I think what we need to do is make the slides available, guys. We'll look into a sort of dummies guide to Power BI, and I can certainly play the fool there because I don't know that stuff myself. So maybe Jonathan or Kevin or both will do a bit of recording with me for a special video. I think that has been excellent. And it really hit what I wanted to hit. Maybe we'll do some sort of follow up. But guys, I've got another meeting now, so I need to go. That meeting is called Lunch. Have a great day and take care of yourselves. Thank you to our experts. Cheers. Take care. Goodbye.